All right, so let's get started. And before I get things going, I did the video today where I discussed who my favorite announcers were, and I knew I didn't want to. I knew I had favorites, and I knew people wouldn't like it. And according to the comment section, I am never weighing in on the topic again, ever. I'm done. That's it. Never. A man's right. A man has a right to his opinion, and if mine differs from somebody else's, okay. But the comments in that video, I'm done. Done. It's over. I'm never talking about it again. As far as I'm concerned, every announcer is fantastic and garbage all at the same time, and I don't care. Because I did the video based on the fact that people had asked me, and apparently they just wanted me to agree with them. So forget it. I'm never doing it again. Um, let's get to something else people will likely disagree with me on, but this is okay. Number 31. Well, of course. They were 31 last week. They were 29 the week before, 26 the week before that, and 30 the week before that. Vancouver just isn't destined to get out of the bottom row. Even though I've moved the row this week, so 26 would get them out of the bottom row. But they're playing out the string. There's major injuries, major holes in this lineup, and the goaltending just isn't up to par. I don't look at Vancouver right now and say, oh, this is going to be good year. Everything's gonna be great. I just don't see it at all. Vancouver is yeah, they're done. Number 30, Ottawa. They were 30 last week, 27 the week before that, 24 the week before that, and 26 the week before that. Yeah, it's been a rough year for Ottawa, and they're playing out the string much like Vancouver. They'll get a win here and there, but they can't build any momentum off of it, which is how you end up in this part of the board. Um, Ottawa in general is just I do wonder about Erik Karlsson as much as anybody else, but I don't obsess on it as much as the media. That's why there hasn't been any further videos on it, because there's nothing to report right now. Um, there's the team photo where you see Karlsson looking down at his gloves. That's simply a matter. To me, it looks like a guy who didn't know when the camera was going off more than I'm going to look miserable in my team photo. But people read into it, and it is kind of funny. Number 29. Wow, these bottom three didn't change. Chicago's still 29. They were 29 last week. They were 26 the week before, 28 the week before that, and 23 the week before that. It's been a miserable season for Chicago. Playoffs last year. No, but still, for Chicago, they're going through some learning curve stuff. The good news is Osterley should be able to play the full year next year. They re-signed Ruda for another year or two, and Highmore looked good in his game today, and he got his first ever NHL goal. So there are things to look at if you're a Chicago fan right now and have some hope for next year. I just don't know that there's enough to really build on. Number 28, Rangers. They're down from 26 last week, 31 the week before, 27 the week before that, and 24 the week before that. So if you're a Rangers fan, it's another rough week. They fall further back of a potential playoff spot, and yeah, again, playoffs last year, playoffs last year, playoffs last year. This is a wacky year. This is a really strange season, and I don't think any of us could have predicted that this was going to be this big of a fall for the Rangers and the Hawks. Hey, people called a fall, but not necessarily to this extent. This is crazy. So, I mentioned teams that could bounce back and turn it around next year. They're both on the list of teams that could just bounce right back into the playoffs. Number 27, Islanders, Fishermen. They're 27 this week. They were 24 last week, 19 the week before that, 20 the week before that, and 21 the week before that. Again, the Islanders, it's defense, 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 defense. You can't win without defense, and your goaltending has to be more consistent. And it's been a really, really rough year for the Islanders. A year that was supposed to be great, that started out with so much promise, and now has just fallen into chaos. It's not getting better necessarily, and I do wonder, like, when the Tavares question comes up going into July 1st, do you just try to re-sign Tavares, or do you re-sign Tavares and try to sign a blue liner? Do you look on free agency and say, you know what, we need another big impact guy, and who might be out there for them? That's a question that I don't necessarily have the answer to. At number 25, or number 26, these guys, Montreal. They're not last. They went in and they got a overtime loss today in Tampa that was a feel good game for Montreal. They were 23 last week, 28 the week before, 30 the week before that, and 28 the week before that. So this is right about average over the last 5 weeks for them. This is not something that's going to shock Montreal fans to see them down here. But again, playoffs. Such a weird season. And for Montreal, it's winding down. But at least Galchenyuk's starting to show signs. Antti Niemi looks like he's ready to be a backup next year. If you go that route and you decide to trade away Lindgren, or at the very least, you could re-sign Niemi and trade him for something, or there's got to be some kind of a value with Niemi based on how he's played in Montreal. He's played very well. And there are some good stories here. Not good scoring stories, though. The problem for Montreal is, again, going to be that number one center spot that they haven't addressed for years. Number 25, Edmonton. So the Oilers this week move up from last week's spot of 28th. They were 25th 2 weeks ago, so they feel familiar here. They were 31 the week before that and 29 the week before that. So again, playoffs. And these teams have all experienced some pretty large falls from grace. Vancouver's on a more long timeline than the others, but it's been a rough go of things. Edmonton with a big win tonight over Minnesota, which is why they're 25th. They were 27th coming into tonight. That win propels them past the Islanders and past Montreal. But, again, this is a row and a half, well, almost a half, row and almost a half, of teams that just have failed to live up to expectations. And you wonder how many of these are going to bounce back next year. Because there was a lot of turnover in the playoffs this year. A lot. No matter where things end up from here, based on who's still actively pursuing playoff spots, there's a lot of turnover. Number 24 is Detroit. They're down 2 spots from last week. They were 22. They were 21 the week before. They were 23 the week before that. And 25 the week before that. So now they've occupied every spot in the last 5 weeks between 21 and 25. Detroit really made it work. Now, if somehow they could get in the playoffs. Detroit started falling. They've had a tough schedule, and they're far enough below 500 right now that I think any hopes they may have had around deadline time that, hey, maybe we can get in, maybe we can sneak in there, maybe we can get hot like Florida's been. Yeah, it's all gone. Detroit is in flux, and I like their young players. I know there's some debate about how good guys like Larkin, Mantha, and these guys are going to be, but I like their young players. I do think they need another superstar up front, and they definitely need a lot of help on the blue line, because Green's going to be going out. There's no way Green resigns. So Green's going to be going out looking for a shot at a run at a Stanley Cup, and Detroit's going to need a lot of help on that blue line and help up front. The net is a little bit in flux because Jimmy Howard is playing very well this season. He played well last year, but at his age, how much longer does he have? And then what do they do? Number 23, and this is quite the jump for Buffalo. They were 27 last week. They were 30 the week before that, 29 the week before that, and 27 the week before that. So this is the highest they've been, and I'm pretty sure it's the highest Buffalo's been all year. And it comes down to the fact that today they lost, but they lost a close one to Vegas. So I couldn't punish them for that, and I thought they played relatively well. I thought Buffalo played well. And they're showing a lot of fight while some of these teams aren't. And I say that well aware that Oilers won tonight, and the Montreal Canadiens showed a lot of fight in Tampa, but Buffalo has looked pretty darn good, and guys like Reinhart are finally showing that potential. And it makes you wonder, can he build on it next year? Because we see this. We see guys that after the trade deadline or after the All-Star break go on a nice long hot streak, and then the following season they go right back to where they were before. Reinhart has to be able to ride that into next season. That's his challenge. That's where The rubber meets the road, rubber meets the road, so to speak, and it's really it's all on him. Number 22, St. Louis. The Blues move up 3 spots from last week, largely on the strength of what they did tonight against LA. 2 weeks ago they were 17th. 3 weeks ago they were 12th. 4 weeks ago they were 10th. So you look at St. Louis and you can say, well, they've moved up 3 spots from last week, but they've still only won 2 of their last 11. And as great as they may have looked today against LA, it's a one-off, and the question then becomes, can they build on that? Can the St. Louis Blues get themselves back in? They're not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, but it's tricky math in that they were so far up there, and they've fallen so far down, and it can be really hard to reverse it. So maybe the game tonight against LA is the start of something different. Maybe that 25th spot that they had last week down here, maybe that's the lowest they're going to get all year. And maybe at this point next week, they're up into 19th or 18th or 16th. And we're talking about how St. Louis is right back in the running. But we'll see. At 21, Carolina. They're down 1 spot from last week. So last week they were 20th. The week before that, 24th. The week before that, 22. The week before that, 22. So they're much like Detroit. They're just right in this little area, and they don't really stray much out of it. Some good results mixed with some bad results, and just an overall mediocre season. And Carolina is where they are. They are mathematically in, like St. Louis, but they lost their GM. Their owner clearly doesn't have a whole lot of faith in what he's got. I'm interested to see what's going to happen from here, though. Like, is Carolina going to bring in, and they talk about how he's got friends in Dallas, is he going to bring one of those guys in as GM? The name that interested me was Dave Tippett. If he's going to Dave Tippett for advice, Tippett was a coach for over a decade. Why not bring him in? Why not give him a shot at GM, or at least assistant GM? And apparently he's been talking as well to Brendan Morrow and Marty Turco. Those are his friends who are Dallas Stars, who are giving him advice on what to do or where the issues lie with Carolina. I haven't heard their names in link with who he might be looking at for GM, but if he's taking their advice, they've got to be on a short list of some sort to get into the organization. So we may see a whole cleaning house situation with Carolina and some guys brought in with Dallas connections, which would be a very interesting situation for them to be in. At 20, and down 2 spots from last week, is LA, and that game today against St. Louis really hurt. St. Louis was 18th last week. They were 22 weeks ago. They were 21 3 weeks ago. They were 15th the week before that. So LA is in a very similar spot to these two. Yep, they can make the playoffs, or the fact that they're 1 point out should be very concerning to them. And a huge loss at home against St. Louis definitely sends a message that this team needs to work on a lot of stuff. And we'll see what the Kings have going for them from here. But this week they definitely took a drop. Also taking a drop, and they're 19th on the list, Arizona. So they hit 17 last week. Bit of a bobble this week. They're down to 19th. But look at it this way. They were 17th last week, 22 the week before, 25 the week before, 31 the week before. So Arizona is still well ahead of that last place, and they went in and they beat that last place team this week. And that 5-2 loss to Colorado really, well, it's a big loss for them, and yet it isn't, because do Arizona fans really want to pull out of last place overall? Does Arizona really want out of last place overall? Are they better off being in last place and at least have a shot at getting the draft lottery win? Or if they lose all 3 of those draws, they still get number 4 rather than 5, 6, or 7. So there's some interesting math, I'm sure, that goes on with John Chayka on this. Like, well, we're winning, but maybe cool off a little bit, guys. Players don't do that, but GMs will think that from time to time. At number 18, New Jersey. They move up 1 spot from last week. And Jersey's lingering 2. They were 16 2 weeks ago. They were 18 3 weeks ago. And 17 4 weeks ago. So New Jersey's been hanging back and in this spot. They're in the playoffs right now. They're below 500 in their last 11 games. And I have some concerns going forward about New Jersey. Just because there's a team that's behind them that's playing fantastic hockey and keeps finding ways to win, or at the very least get points they probably shouldn't. And for New Jersey, they're in a rough spot. So we'll see if they're able to build on the win they got today over a very fantastic Nashville team, or if they fall back down. At 17 and moving up the charts is Columbus. Columbus 17th. They were 21 last week. They were 18 the week before, 16 the week before, and 17 4 weeks ago. So they're right back where they were 4 weeks ago. And I'll wait and see. Or no, they were 18th 4 weeks ago. So these two have flipped spots in 4 weeks. Just to give you guys an idea of how this chart will change, but things stay pretty close. Pretty close to similar from week to week. And teams end up right back where they were 3-4 weeks ago in some cases like this. Columbus is looking like they're a playoff team. They've gone on a nice little run. Vanek was a very nice addition. Ian Cole looks like he's having fun in Columbus too. And, a storyline of Cole in Columbus, up against Pittsburgh in the playoffs, that could be kind of fun to watch. At least I think so, personally. Even though Ian Cole was not exactly a driving force for Pittsburgh. But hey, you need these storylines in the playoffs. At number 16, Colorado. The Avalanche fall back one spot this week. They're still, they were 15th last week, 23rd the week before, 18th the week before that, and 16th the week before that. So they're right where they were 4 weeks ago. Again, it's kind of weird how that works, isn't it? But the Avs are on an upswing, and yet they do tend to lose a couple games here and there, and they're in the playoffs right now, and I hope they make it. I do. Between the Kings and the Avs, I think the Avs would be more entertaining just because they're less predictable. Predicting what the Avs would do in the playoffs is near impossible. Not to mention, if they got that second wildcard spot and played Nashville, that would be a fantastic series. That would be a lot of fun. Nashville would obviously be the favorite, but Colorado as a Cinderella team would be fun to watch. And watching McKinnon against that Predators defense would be a great series. Goaltending obviously would skew towards Nashville. Defense would skew towards Nashville. But really just for exuberance and, hey, we're not supposed to be here, don't underestimate what Colorado could do if they make the playoffs. They could be a really fun Cinderella story. Number 15, rough week for Washington. They won tonight. They got the shutout win over San Jose, which is good, but rough week in general. They're down 2 spots from where they were last week, which was the same spot where they were 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago they were in 11th, and 4 weeks ago they were 5th. They were right here 4 weeks ago, and it's been an issue for them. There's still that depth issue. Grubauer got a shutout tonight. At what point do we start to discuss Grubauer stealing starts from Holtby? Holtby's stats haven't been as strong as Grubauer's over the last couple of months. That's going to become a storyline if it hasn't already for Washington, and that they have their share of issues. So yeah, Capitals 15th spot. 14th spot, down 2 spots from last week, is Dallas. Nice gutsy win over Anaheim. I like that, but they've had some stops and starts along the way. They were 12th last week, 14th 2 weeks ago, 8th the week before that, and 7th 4 weeks ago. So they're not back where they were 4 weeks ago. 4 weeks ago, Washington was 5th, Dallas was 7th. And here we are with Dallas in 14th. They're good. The Dallas Stars are good. They're ahead of 17 teams on this board, but are they good enough? And that's the question that bugs me as they go forward. Lettinen's been playing well, so do you start him ahead of Bishop? Do you go that route? Does Bishop start no matter what? If Bishop has a bad game one, do you go to Lettinen? Are we right back where we were a couple years ago, where it was Lettinen and Niemi, and you had an issue with a guy having 2 good games in a row? Is that where we're going to end up? And is Dallas a contender? That's the question I've been asking myself for months. At number 13, and up 1 spot from last week, is Anaheim. So the Ducks are up to 13th, so they're up one spot from last week. They were 11th 2 weeks ago, 19th 3 weeks ago, and 20th 4 weeks ago. So it's been a nice run for Anaheim. At one point this week, I had Anaheim top 10. Patrons know what I'm talking about. I showed them some behind the scenes stuff, and they were top 10. I had them pretty high up, and then they had a little bit of a rough go the rest of the week. So they're 13th, but I don't know that I want to play them in the playoffs. I don't. In the first round, I don't know that I would want to play the Anaheim Ducks. There's a lot of good weapons there. There's a good defense, and there's goaltending that can get hot. Whether it's Miller or Gibson, they can both get hot at the right time. And the Ducks are a team to watch going forward. At number 12, Sharks. So with that loss tonight, they dropped down from 10th. They would have been 10th 2 weeks in a row. They were 10th last week, 12th the week before, 15th the week before, and 13th the week before that. So San Jose's in a nice area between 10th and 15th most weeks. And sort of like how you've got the guys at the bottom. But is San Jose going to be happy right now? Probably not. Losing that game against Washington at home tonight, they have to make sure this isn't the start of a trend. This is, Peter DeBoer is going to be probably telling the players how he feels about them getting shut out by Grubauer and the Caps at home as soon as tomorrow morning, if he didn't already tell them tonight. But San Jose's still a good team, and as long as Thornton comes back and can play for them, I do think there's a run there. I think it absolutely can happen. Number 11, and these guys would have dropped a lot further. Philly. Philly coming into tonight was in 13th. Last week, they were 3rd. The week before, they were 5th. The week before, they were 9th. The week before, they were 14th. So, Philly's climb is over. Now, Philly's in a dogfight. And the funny thing was, I had Philly at 3rd last week, and then by Monday, I think I had them down to 7th. So, while people were still upset at the rankings from Saturday night, I had already dropped them down. The teams that people were like, how are they ahead of these teams? I was like, they're not. There were a couple comments that I left in the comment section of the last week's rankings were like, how can you have this team ahead? And I'm like, I don't. Meaning, right now, I don't. So, the board usually works out and things usually settle out the way that they're meant to. But the board has a mind of its own. I let it speak for itself. The board. It's like the log lady from Twin Peaks, but this is my log instead. I would introduce people to the board. I would point out that I had the wrong week on the board. That's right, that falls. I would point out I had the wrong week on the board, and people will point that out. It's week 22, and it's really got its own mind. Now, 10th place, and moving up a lot, Calgary. And I'm going to say right now, Calgary moves up from 16th last week. And they were 10th the week before, 14th the week before that, 12th the week before that. This team is a strange one. And I'm not sure with the Flames playoffs? Maybe? Mike Smith could be back very, very soon. He's practicing with the team. He could be ready their next game. Calgary could get back into around this area if Mike Smith comes back and plays really well for them. And he could definitely help them knock Colorado out of the playoffs, which would be upsetting to Colorado, but what would be more upsetting to me would be if they knocked Dallas out of the playoffs. Dallas has 82 points. Colorado has 80. So I'm not going to say that Dallas is out of the woods because they're not. And the Flames, while they don't have games in hand on the teams in front of them, and that hurts, the teams in front of them only have one game in hand for the most part, the ones they're trying to catch. So if Smith comes back and they can keep on the roll they've been on, and Riddick's looked pretty good, then the Flames absolutely can build on this. 9th place, same place as last week. Vegas gets points from me for the fact that they didn't lose to Buffalo. They tie it. If they'd lost to Buffalo, we're likely looking at Vegas outside the top 10. But they get that win in a shootout. So they remain in the same spot as last week. They were 4th 2 weeks ago, and they were 2nd both 3 and 4 weeks ago. Vegas is going through their lull. Their lull keeps them in the top 10. That's how good they've been. that even when they're not playing their best, they still don't fall out of my top 10. They're still good enough, and I know it was a shootout win over Buffalo, which is not fantastic result, but look, Buffalo's been playing relatively well lately, and for Vegas, every win counts. Number 8, Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh drops one spot. They had a relatively good week. They had 3 wins. That loss to Toronto tonight is why they dropped back, and some other teams have managed to pass them. So they were 7th last week, third 2 weeks ago, first 3 weeks ago, and 8th the week before that. The Penguins are really kind of all over the map, and their goaltending is why. Or is it? Because I look and I say defense is also the issue here. So they traded out Ian Cole, who went to Columbus and looks like he's happy there, and he's played relatively well. I don't know where Pittsburgh goes from here, but the three-peat is looking less and less likely right now to me. And you can point and say, well, if Matt Murray was in there, they'd be fine, but I don't know that that's necessarily true. At number 7, they were 11 last week. Florida's on their way up. They were 15 2 weeks ago, 13 3 weeks ago, and 19 4 weeks ago. This is the highest Florida's been all year, and they're legit. Ask Tampa. They were behind against Tampa, and they came back and got a point there. They have got points in games they shouldn't. They've won games they probably shouldn't, and they've come up with a lot of big wins. There should be a lot of excitement in Florida. Judging by attendance that I see, there isn't, but there should be. Start getting out and watching this team because they're playing very, very well. Luongo's been on fire. Barkov's been amazing. Huberdeau is scoring at a decent clip, and Ekblad is looking like Ekblad, like what he was supposed to be. Florida is intimidating. They are. They're playing some great hockey. They could miss the playoffs because of the huge hole they dug themselves into early on. Columbus and New Jersey, if they play well, Florida probably misses the playoffs, but Florida's doing everything they can to get back into that race, and they're there. At 6th, they're up from 8th last week. They were 9th the week before, 10th the week before, and 11th the week before. So Minnesota jumped 2 spots rather than 1 this week. They've been on a nice progression of 1 every single week, and because Pittsburgh lost to Toronto and dropped 2 spots, Minnesota's in 6th. Minnesota with a loss against Edmonton tonight, but coming into tonight, Minnesota was in... Yeah, they were 5th. I don't know why I'm saying that. They were 5th before tonight. Minnesota's been playing very solid hockey. The loss against Edmonton hurts them. But they won that game in Vancouver. And they've won their games leading into that one too. So, bit of a setback for them tonight against Edmonton. These things happen. And they'll go from here. Can they hold off Dallas? Can they hold off Colorado? Colorado and Minnesota, it could be quite the feud going down to the wire if Dallas falls off the pace. Number 5, and these guys were in trouble until tonight. So they hold their place from last week. They were 2 on the charts 2 weeks ago. They were 5 3 weeks ago and 9 4 weeks ago. So the Toronto Maple Leafs have managed to hold a spot, and again they're not when they've lost, it hasn't been horrible. And tonight's win is a huge win for them. So they're still 3rd spot in their division. They have no doubt that they're going to make it. No doubt that they're probably going to end up finishing 3rd because the teams ahead of them refuse to lose. But this has been a decent season for Toronto, and the fact that they get a big win tonight against Pittsburgh without Austin Matthews, who should be back pretty darn quick, Toronto may be back into that contending spot. So Toronto, Boston, Tampa, all contenders, and one of them is going to be out in the first round, and that's going to cause all kinds of kerfuffles and arguments. Number 4, you knew it. They held steady this week. The loss tonight bumped them down. They were higher than 4th coming into today, but they're 4th, and that's where they've been 4 weeks out of the last 5. They were 8th 2 weeks ago, which caused Winnipeg meltdowns. But, they went back up to 4th last week, and they're 4th this week. They're playing very, very well. Solid hockey. Are they in the top 3? No. But other than the loss tonight against Philly, they've been playing very well. And it's just a matter of these teams, there's so little to choose between the teams in the top. I'll say top 8 right now. Maybe go to top 9 if Vegas wins their next game too. But top 8, just based on how they've been playing over the last month and a half. Winnipeg's been really, really solid. In third place, moving up 3 spots from last week. They were 6th last week. 7th the week before that. And 3rd 3 weeks ago. And 3rd 4 weeks ago is Boston. They've won 6 in a row, which is a nice streak. So, Boston with the win over Chicago, and I'm going to say it again, not a win that I particularly look at and go, oh, cool, they won this. But, you can't bump them down the chart for a win that you think looked kind of sloppy, because they won it 7-4. So it's not like it was a 1-goal game. There was the empty netter at the end of the game, but it was 6-4 without the empty netter. Boston just, they look like they're probably going to finish the league 3rd in points, but they're going to be 2nd in their division, and they could get knocked out by Toronto in the first round. I'm okay with that. Compared to where I thought Boston was going to be this year, this is fantastic. So I don't have a problem with that at all. Number 2. Right. And which means number 1, no surprise. I'm not going to bump Nashville out for losing in a shootout. I'm not going to bump Tampa up for winning in a shootout over Montreal. So they both went to shootouts, and one lost and one won. But Nashville had won 10 in a row, and that buys them some leeway as first tonight anyways. If Nashville lost their next game 7-1 and Tampa wins their next game 8-1, clearly I'd switch spots. But Tampa was 2nd last week. They were 6th the week before, 7th the week before that, and 1st 4 weeks ago. Nashville, this is the 3rd week in a row they're number 1 on the chart. And they were 6th the 2 weeks before that. So Nashville is playing some great, great hockey. So why do I still have Tampa up here? Because I still think Tampa's the most likely cup winner. So, for other awards, let me get the other marker, because I don't think the blue one shows up particularly well. For Vezina Trophy, I do think Pekka is going to win it. Rocket Richard Trophy, are you kidding me? Laine is playing some fantastic hockey, and he's proving that, yes, he was a number 2 draft pick behind a very solid franchise player. He's a franchise player too, just like he told us he was. Kucherov I'll still take for the Art Ross. McKinnon I'll still take for the Hart. Look, Colorado's in the playoffs. Without McKinnon, they're not. The Norris Trophy, I'll jump on the bandwagon and say Hedman. Barzal's still the Calder winner, and it's not close. And I'll still take Barkov for the Selke. He is a large part of the reason why Florida's been so darn good for the last 5-6 weeks. And I believe he'll get recognized for it. I do believe that Barkov would win the Selke if it was awarded right now. There are other good defensive forwards too, and I know people are going to bring them up, but I still say Barkov would win that. So there you go. There's the power rankings. And for people who skip to the end, I'm going to do this. So, trying to defend why I've dropped down Toronto to 31st, it's this. Without Austin Matthews, they're just not the same team. Now, Vancouver, it may seem odd to have them at first, but when you look at how Markstrom has been playing and you look at Nilsson's mask, it's undeniable that Vancouver, right now, is playing the best hockey in the NHL. Ottawa's close. Erik Karlsson's been fantastic. And Nick Schmaltz in Chicago has been a great story. The Rangers, really, Ryan Spooner is just making a huge difference. Nash has been a bum for Boston, so that's why they're down here. And Tampa, needing overtime to beat Montreal shows why Montreal's here and Tampa's down here. It's embarrassing. And the Jets lose to Philly. I had them in 3rd coming into today. I had to drop them 25 spots. Philly stays in 11th because Vegas reasons, and for Vegas reasons, they're 18th. So there you go. There's the rankings, the power rankings. From 1 through 31. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be sure to update these every day and make sure that I maintain the integrity of these rankings because these are really important. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, and thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.